Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to our May 23rd Community Development Committee. This is our second meeting of the month, and so we will go straight into the agenda. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Calling the roll, Mr. Hairston.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Brady.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
We have a quorum, and I'd like the record to reflect that Mr. Greenspan and Mr. Miller are in attendance.
All right, thank you. Any public comment related to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
All right, everyone hasn't had a moment to look at the May 2nd meetings. I'll accept the motion for approval.
So moved. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. All right, item 5, matters referred to the committee.
Ordinance 2015-0003, an ordinance amending Title VII of the Cuyahoga County Code to include community development as an allowable use for the Casino Revenue Fund and to establish the County Community Development Supplemental Grant Fund Program.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, so we will open it up for discussion. In front of you, you should have a proposed second amendment to the proposed substitute. And so I'll briefly just explain the two. The first proposed substitute that's in your packet deals with the amendments that we've all talked about before in terms of the amount of awards that can be made. You can read through it. The dollar amount and the time that it will be, this ordinance will go forth. In the second amendment, which is proposed substitute number 2, which only very simply in the list of potential applicants, eligibility requirements, it allows for community development corporations who are tax exempt under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. So that is saying that only CDCs, community development corporations, no other 501 will be able to apply under the way this is written. And so from that, we will open it up to discussion, and we will, I'm assuming the sponsor of this would like to comment. Mr. Greenspan.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The beauty of this piece of legislation is in its familiarity and simplicity. Familiarity in that this program is modeled after the CDBG program, which all of our communities are familiar with. It's a program that our administration is familiar with reviewing, sending out applications and reviewing. And the intent is that this program will follow the same traditional timeline as the current CDBG program, and that applications go out, they're due back, they're scored, and the award notifications are done in conjunction with the existing CDBG program. So that's the simplicity of the program and the familiarity, once again, because all the communities are familiar with it, and so is our administration. We're not creating another entity to review and score. We're not creating another criteria. Very simple, very familiar. Since we have met last, we've had numerous meetings to go over various terms and conditions of the program. There are 3 amendments in the proposed substitute that we've talked about. They have to do with, number one, instead of it being a percentage of the total casino revenue coming in on an annual basis, it's a flat $500,000 per year. It is only in place, the funding of this legislation is only in place for the current 16-17 budget. So the funding is secured but limited in its longevity. And the third item has to do with, and if we look in the proposed substitute, the pages aren't numbered. It has to do with the fact that there will be no fewer than 10 awards offered. And so what that does, instead of saying that there shall be 10 awards of up to $50,000, this gives some flexibility in the award, in the applications being submitted, in that if an application comes in and the request is greater than $50,000, there very well may be that opportunity for that application to receive more than $50,000. But in total, it's capped at $500,000. That's the purpose of the original, of the substitute. I guess we'll refer to it as proposed substitute number 1. The reason that, and the chairman and I talked about this last night, why I am not in favor at this time of proposed substitute 2, which has the additional language of adding the CDCs, is in the sense that I believe it's important, once again, to keep this simple, to keep it familiar. But at the same time, the proposed substitute 1 does not prohibit CDCs from applying through their cities or prevent any organization from applying through their cities for these funds. So with that being said, that's why I'm not in favor of adding the CDC component in there. They're currently not prohibited from applying in. It just doesn't make them a dedicated applicant. Because if we go down this road and we start identifying 501c3s as being applicants, then we are potentially opening up the door to any 501c3, because it's stated in here, any community organization from wanting to participate in this program. Once again, let's keep it simple. It's a program that works. It's modeled after the federal program. I don't need to go into the differences between, well, I'll go into the difference between the state, between this program and the federal program is the funding source and the geographic restrictions of low, mod, or ITA, or the economic distinctions that are in the federal program. Other than that, it's a mirror program of it. The simplicity is important, and I would urge support. Although I'm not a member of this committee, I would urge support for proposed substitute number 1 and against number 2 only to the extent that, and because of the purpose that 2 expands the applicant base to to other entities. Let's just leave it at that, other entities. I don't care if it's a CDC, whoever it is. The original intent was 59 communities apply in, 59 communities are the applicants. That was the intent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenspan. Just to rebuttal a few of your points. Well, one, CDCs have worked with Department of Development multiple times in the past. The Department of Development is very familiar with working with community development corporations that have been set up for years, for quite some time now. CDCs community development corporations are the ones who are doing this very work that we're talking about. Streetscaping, improvements, enhancements to communities, and to not allow the folks who are in these communities who are doing this work the ability to apply, I don't think is the right thing to do. I think if we restrict the people from applying for these small dollar grants, who are, again, doing this very work in our neighborhoods, would not serve well. I think that there is no other funding source that a CDC within the county that I believe of has to apply directly through the city. I believe the CDC has the ability to apply directly to the county for additional funding. You know, they applied to for out-of-school time grant awards. You know, we've seen many of them that come across our agenda for other programs, initiatives that they want to do. I think we have something good here. I think we can expand upon it by allowing these organizations to be a part of this to help continue the good things that they're doing in their communities. And this is not only something that is happening in one part of our county. This is something we are seeing that is taking shape across other parts of the county. CDCs are being set up because they understand the value of importance, and if they didn't, they wouldn't be doing that. Not only for additional revenue streams, but also for the ability for them to focus on these scale of projects within the residential communities of their cities. And yes, there's nothing that says they can't apply, but we wanted to make sure that there's no misunderstanding that they can apply, and so that was part of the reason of making sure we define it here. And the way this is the substitute is written, the substitute clearly states that only community development corporations who are tax exempt under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code will be allowed to apply. So this dispels any notion that any 501c3, any other organization that simply acts as a CDC or maybe do things that they are doing can apply. No, it specifically states that only community development corporations will be able to apply. So the fact that other entities or other organizations will come along, create these companies, or come and apply won't happen here, the way it's written.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Brady.
I have already agreed over a period of lots of discussions and a lot of time to support the substitute for the amendments that we had been discussed for quite some time, and outside of not being, sort of ambivalent about the cap, I'm in support of the amendments as I have been. What I'd like to find out, since we have this new proposed substitute, is a little bit more about what it might mean. And I'd like a little either help from the committee or maybe help from the staff. And the question is, as it's been brought up by both councilmen, I believe, with slightly different opinions or maybe definitions, who is eligible under the new substitute, proposed substitute, under this proposed substitute? There seems to be a little bit of uncertainty about who would be eligible.
Understood.
And also this question about whether they would be eligible anyway without a substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Michael King, council staff. As the second proposed substitute was drafted, it specifies that they have to be 501c3 tax exempt, not-for-profit corporations. They're called community development corporations. What that means is they have to be organized for the purpose of community development. When you create your corporation, you apply for 501c3 tax exempt status, and you have to provide a purpose as to why you believe you're tax exempt. So there's not a strict legal definition as to what constitutes community development in the legislation, but it's not like existing 501c3 corporations organized for other tax exempt purposes could apply for this money. I think there would probably need to be some judgment exercised by the Department of Development in administering the program to determine who really are applicants. But I think with the existing landscape of community development corporations, it's pretty well established, pretty well known who's a community development corporation and who isn't at this point in time. If further clarification is needed, we can perhaps have that discussion at some point. To the question about whether or not they could apply already under the existing legislation, currently they cannot. Right now, the only applicants are cities and municipalities and townships. I think the point Councilman Greenspan was making earlier was that a community development corporation could work with their city and submit an application in that format. So just some clarification on that.
Mr. Chairman, to Mr. King, do we have, I know this has all happened in a fairly brief amount of time. Do we have, could you give me some examples of CDCs, because they're generally thought of as being exclusively in the city of Cleveland? Are there CDCs outside the city of Cleveland, and could you give me any examples of those, or do we need to do some more research on that?
I can give you a few examples. I'm sure there are other members of the staff who could probably work with them.
I'd like to hear this to have some sense of what we're talking about.
Good morning, Khalil Sarin, council staff. There are several examples outside of the city of Cleveland that I would point to, most notably Lakewood Alive. Let's see, Shaker Heights has South Euclid. Is it One South Euclid? One South Euclid. Warrensville Heights has one. There is some talk of other suburbs creating CDCs as well to supplement their community development work. And Cleveland is, more known for that in their neighborhoods, but the cities are also beginning to. And in fact, even a city as faced with such difficulties as East Cleveland is looking to form one as well. There are organizations within East Cleveland that are ramping up their capability in order to be able to do community development work that particular city may or may not have the wherewithal to do themselves. If a city is focused on, keeping the lights on or making sure that firefighters are paid, an organization like that might be able to fill the gap and put in an application for this kind of funding when the city may not have the capability to do so.
Just one follow-up comment, and thank you, Khalil. I was surprised when I first heard this proposal because it hadn't come up in the discussions that we had earlier in the year, which were pretty extensive. And looking back on it, I guess surprised it didn't. But after it was proposed, and I thought about it, and because I know a little about CDCs, I thought, well, there are good ones and there are ones that aren't as good, and there are city halls that are maybe a little better staffed than others. But there is a nimbleness to a good CDC anywhere in the county to be able to be involved in this level of economic development, which I've always been a little skeptical about in the first place, as you know, with using casino money this way. But it seems that in some cities, and Cleveland would be no exception, in some cases the CDCs are, might be better staffed and have more incentive than folks at City Hall. And since the city is so large, you can see why the focus of a few talented people in a neighborhood at least the size of any suburb might be actually a way to enhance this program that we just hadn't considered in the past. So I think there's some merit to this suggestion, and but I know it's only come up recently, so I want to hear what everybody has to say about it.
Mr. Brady. We'll go to Dale, then we'll go to Mr. Jones.
Mr. Chairman and my colleagues, one of the most important things that this legislation does is that it makes community development an eligible activity for casino revenue funds, and I support that. I believe that that creating attractive communities with special features often precedes effective economic development. So I do support it. I do feel that that even with this relatively small dollar amount program that we have in mind, that we should try to encourage communities to come up with proposals that are significant and expect to be impactful, as opposed to simply the run-of-the-mill kind of things that they're trying to accomplish. And I would say generally that that my outlook would be that it would be better that that community development be an eligible activity, and that that there be no specific set aside, and that proposals of this type would apply on their merits along with the other proposals. However, on a 2-year pilot basis, I'm supportive of the substitute, and my feeling about including the CDCs is kind of the same. That I think that should be on a short leash, but on a pilot basis, I'm okay with trying that and seeing how well it works. So I would be supportive of either substitute 1 or substitute 2, whichever one the committee decides on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I support the legislation, and when Councilman Hairston first introduced this idea to me for adding the CDCs, thought it was an excellent idea. We've certainly worked with CDs who are very capable and competent, and the opportunity for them to apply directly for these funds, I think is a good idea. So I do support Councilman Hairston's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to speak rather bluntly here because we got to this point trying to flow some dollars out to the inner ring and outer ring suburbs. And this is going to be looked at, because I've already talked to folks, as more money going to Cleveland. Whether that's true or not, that's what they're going to think. And what I hear is we support levies in the county, and Cleveland's getting more money in the gambling money than us. Granted, they have the casinos, but the ancillary dollars coming in with the rooms and restaurants and everything else. So there's a major plus to having that, plus the money that they're getting. I don't see Cleveland doling out any of their money to the CDCs. I would ask that question. So we have 59 communities seemingly against Cleveland. And they're not happy with the $500,000. They're not happy. They think this is just, there are some words for it, but it's not a lot of money. And they see the money flowing into Cleveland, and they feel left out. And I represent inner ring and outer ring suburbs, and none of them are happy. None of them. They feel like they've done everything they can. They've supported the county. In the past, they've been ignored. I think they like this form of government in that they have a direct feed into what's going on, but they have no confidence that any of this money is going to flow out to them. And when you think about it, 500,000 divided by 10, divided by 59, the chances of them seeing a $50,000 hit over a 2-year period is pretty low. Add in the CDCs, and I'm not arguing the merits of the CDCs, but add in the CDCs, and it seems as though that Cleveland's going to have, and do we have a number on how many CDCs there are in the county? So we don't even know that number. So say it's 10, that's, and be it Euclid, South Euclid, Cleveland, that's more shots at the apple that they have. And somebody in the outer reaches of the county or the inner ring suburbs, like, I've got one. How is this fair? So the fairness factor is coming in real hard. And I suspect that if we do the CDC, the substitute two, you're going to see a room full of mayors that are already hot. And I know the inner ring mayors are incredibly hot about this. And the outer ring hasn't said anything. They're now going to come in. So it's a fairness thing. Do we do 2 years, add the CDC in, and then I have to hear when a CDC gets an award over one of my communities? I mean, I'm getting heat, is what I'm telling you, and I think we all are going to that are outside of Cleveland. And again, it's a fairness thing. If I'm a mayor outside of Cleveland, do I feel I'm being treated fairly by the county? And the answer is clearly going to be no. Even if we don't add the CDCs, they're not happy because they see the chunk of money and it's been shrunk down to $500,000, which to some communities is a godsend. $50,000 changes the life of people in some communities. Some others, it doesn't dent. But it's the perception of what we're doing, and I was surprised at they feel as though we're going back to the old days, that the county's ignoring them. I just don't want to do that. I just don't want to do that. So I'm really, it's a double-edged sword for me. They're not happy even with the 500. They'd be grateful for it. But if we're going to divide it up 59 and add 10 more, 69 ways, it's going to get ugly. It already has with me, I can tell you. It already has. And I understand. I get it. So I don't know if we wait the 2 years and then add the CDCs in, because again, I don't know how many there are. I'll say there's 10. And it does not prohibit them from participating with their communities. And does this accelerate potentially cities that don't have CDCs to encourage the creation of CDCs just to get in, to have another bite at the apple? I don't know if we're creating a monster down the road. Because if I'm a community in the inner ring particularly, I would do that. If I were mayor, I would encourage that to happen. So I'd have more opportunity to see dollars flow back to my community. I don't know if we should do that. I don't think we should encourage that. But I understand the thought, and I appreciate that. And what my community see not always is the full picture. When you're a mayor in a town, which I think is the worst job in the world, is you have a town. You don't care about anything else outside that town. That's your job. I get it. And I don't have a town. I've got a district. So I'm getting all this feedback, and it's I don't know what to do.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. I appreciate your comments. So, any more discussion? Seeing none. Now, okay, Ms. Simon.
I guess I might as well weigh in on this. I'm a little uncomfortable with this opportunity for CDCs to apply, because I think the municipalities can do this themselves. And when I told you initially, I think it dilutes the pot too much. And I think whatever the CDCs want to do, the cities can apply and work through the CDC themselves, or do this. But I just think it dilutes it. I'm not going to necessarily oppose this, but I'm not totally comfortable. I would prefer to give municipalities a priority over CDCs, to give them the first shot, because really that's what I envisioned when I co-sponsored this with Councilman Greenspan, to enable the cities to start seeing this money that fall in the cracks, these gray zone areas. But what this, and I understand CDCs do good work, but some don't. And I don't know if I'm going to put everything in the lap of development to make these decisions for us. Because I know that's what's going to happen. They're going to start to look at this and decide which CDC is valid, which one isn't. It kind of just really creates an unnecessary layer of application of this dollars. It dilutes it. I would be more comfortable if the first year was just for municipalities, and the second year, then we would open it up. And by then, I want a list of all these CDCs and what they're doing and how they're doing. I don't want to hold this up, but I think that might be a way to say, look, year one is just for municipalities, townships. Second year, then we would open it up to CDCs. By then, we would have a list and maybe put some criteria in, other than just say, hey, maybe have some stipulations on a CDC has to be in existence for whatever, 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, but not like all of a sudden they're going to spring up and start applying, which really dilutes the pot for municipalities that have been waiting so long to be able to breathe a little bit after the local government cuts. So that's how I see this. I don't want to shut down CDCs, because I think they do valuable work, but on the other hand, these municipalities have been waiting, and it dilutes it. So those are my comments. If there's a way, if anybody would be willing to at least have the first year just going to municipalities, then open it up, and that will give us time to put some stipulations around CDCs to have some balance there.
Mr. Chairman?
Just real quickly. At the end of the day, this is a competitive process, so no one's guaranteed money at all. There's 59 communities. Not all 59 will be awarded. At the end of the day, this is competitive. You present your best shot. Either you get it or either you don't. All right. You have, yes, some CDCs that are better than others, but at the end of the day, for me, this is about folks who are on the ground who's doing this work every single day. Why now allow the CDCs to be a part of the first 2 years? Again, I've heard many times that this is a pilot. After 2 years, we'll review this. And after 2 years, we can review this. And if it doesn't work, then we can make adjustments to it at that point. I think excluding them, in my opinion, would not be the right thing. Mr. Gallagher.
I'm good.
All right, thank you. So, seeing no more questions.
Just one more. I might have missed the answer, Mr. Chair. Did we get an answer on how many CDCs are in Cleveland versus inner and outer rings? I mean, Cleveland's getting the lion's share of casino revenue. They also disperse it to their communities within their wards. And we're struggling to get anything and haven't been able to see anything outside of the city of Cleveland up until this year, barely. What's the answer?
Joe Nani, on Neighborhood Progress website, they have approximately 25 community development corporations that operate in the city of Cleveland. I don't know how accurate that is because I just did that search real quick. And it includes, a wide variety like the Gateway District Community Development Corporation and things along those lines. I have not been able to find. There used to be an organization by the name of Cleveland Neighborhood Development Corporation that encompassed all CDCs and that expanded in the county, but I haven't been able to find the list that they would have in terms of membership.
Thank you. But within that, you have many CDCs who do different things. Some do these type of projects that we have outlined in the ordinance, and some don't. And not everyone will apply. It could be an instance where everyone do apply. But again, this is a competitive process. So the fact that it is competitive is not guaranteeing anyone anything. And if communities believe they have the best, the strongest, the project or proposal, then we submit it, and they submit it to development, and then we choose from there. Thank you. Mr. Brady.
This opens up a lot of issues that would make for an interesting discussion if it wasn't so personal. These kind of funds going to local communities are unprecedented in some ways, particularly this kind of money that is so flexible, and so that the mayor of a small suburb views this in a way that's in an outsized way more intensely than they do a lot of other things that we do. But I think that we've opened up a discussion that was kind of inevitable if you were going to begin to disperse casino money in the way that this legislation, as was introduced in the beginning, it started to open up a lot of questions. And if we'll look back a little bit, we started with communities being actually excluded from this program altogether. So that has changed. And but the more this is discussed, the more sort of rocks we turn over in terms of how this money can be used and why it would make money to use money to spend money on small projects. And people have indicated that a small project makes a big difference to a small community. And for those who don't live in the city of Cleveland, which is most people in the county, for those who haven't worked at a CDC, which is most people for sure, for those who haven't been a member of the Cleveland City Council, which is most people, but represented at this desk today, you do view things differently. City of Cleveland is obviously a very big government. It's cumbersome. The opportunity to work through it can be complicated, and I'm not sure that that this program would get the same kind of attention from an economic development department in a city the size of the city of Cleveland as it would in a small suburb, and that the more nimble CDCs, especially the ones that have been established for many years, have in some cases superior staffing. And I think maybe that's what my colleagues are beginning to realize too, that they might get beat out by people that are better than they are at community development, have been doing it longer, understand how to do it. Hey, that's competition. I thought that was like what this was all about. But I do think that since this issue has been raised only very, very recently, and because of its serious implications on the legislation as it was introduced some time ago, that what I would advise, and because there's a split, there are differences of opinion certainly here. And in fact, this committee was set up to some extent so that there would be a difference of opinion, so that the inner ring suburbs and the outer ring suburbs would have a seat at this table to discuss these issues, and it's playing out just that way. I would recommend that we, since this is new, but may have merit, but may be another issue where the council may be divided, that we spend, if the chairman is willing, the next 2 weeks between now and a committee meeting on the 1st of June. I would say next Monday, but that's Memorial Day. The 6th of June is the Monday following, although that wouldn't prevent us from meeting somewhere else. I'm just saying, typically, this would be what we would do. If we would meet 2 weeks from today, then maybe in the next 2 weeks, we can find out how many CDCs there are exactly, get more information on them, have a better, have a more, have a discussion. I'm a little uncomfortable after all of this discussion supporting the second proposed substitute at this meeting this morning. But I do think there's merit in it, and maybe if we understand it better, and maybe if we enter into some dialogue, we can come to get closer to a consensus. Because I think it's worth exploring, and I think that we really can't do that justice in this short meeting today, and that we need to do some more research and some more, have a better understanding of what we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Mr. Greenspan.
Mr. Harrison, just as a follow-on, it appears that the differences between 1 and 2 is merely the inclusion. I don't mean merely to minimize the impact, but is the language regarding to the inclusion of CDCs. Would it be appropriate, I'm not a member of the committee, to at least move substitute 1 and adopt it, amend, and then have the discussion about the inclusion of CDCs as a substitute amendment? Because it doesn't appear, it's going to go one way or the other. Either 1 or 2 is going to pass. 1 includes 3 of the 4 components that we're on it appears we're on agreement in number 2. So by merely adopting 1, it takes those issues off the table, and then the focus of the discussion is on the inclusion of CDCs. Once again, I'm not a member of the committee, so I can't make a motion, but I'm just introducing that as a thought.
Well, we can also pass number 2, and then we can amend as well with that same fact. But I think because of the issues that have been raised here and the questions and the concerns, I think we do as we take in consideration Mr. Brady's point that we spend the next week or two kind of combing through this and come back and meet here on the 6th, that Monday, and make a decision at that point.
Mr. Chairman, while I'm fully in support of Mr. Greenspan's substitute, which is a collaboration really of the council over a long period of time, I think it's, and while I would be willing to support that today because I had been willing to support it for quite some time, I think that in the course of this discussion or dialogue, we may find out that 1 proposed substitute instead of 2 may make more sense. I'm not sure. I'm saying, and that some of the details, some of the criteria, and maybe even the amount of money that we ultimately decide to appropriate. That there are different ways to look at this, and I don't think that we would want to be amending this substitute if we decided to again 2 weeks from now. And what I would like to do, hoping that we've learned a little bit, is to try to take care of this business in committee, because if we don't get a consensus, we should know, if we've learned anything, we've learned that a majority in committee does not mean a majority in the full council. And so I would like to avoid a 6-5 vote. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I'd like to avoid that happening in the full council when this bill is finally approved, which I believe it will be. But I think that you really have to be able to have a better reason to oppose Councilman Harrison's substitute than anything I've heard so far. I mean, I was surprised. I hadn't thought of it. But I was also surprised that because it was late, and I was also surprised when I started to think about it, like I said, because of someone who has dealt with City Hall, that it's got some merit to it. It's got some merit to it, and so I would advise that we hold both substitutes and really make a real effort over the next 2 weeks to find common ground.
Thank you, Mr. Ritter. Mr. Gallagher.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think a little time would also, to be fair, give me some time to find out exactly who the CDCs are, what they've done, what they do. I'm really not up on all that they have done. So it really would be unfair. I know what the cities do and what they try to do with CDBG money, but I'm unfamiliar. So this will give me an opportunity to talk maybe some council people in Cleveland and some of these CDC organizations and find out exactly what's going on.
I'll also encourage you to talk to the ones that are outside the city of Cleveland as well, because CDCs are not just within the boundaries of Cleveland. And the same can be said is that a lot of us who are not in these inner and outer suburbs are unfamiliar with the work that they're doing. I mean, it kind of goes both ways. And so, we all can kind of dig and look and see what we can find out about these cities and development corporations. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Councilman Brady said, I like the fact that we go back and remember this started from a zero-sum point where our outer ring and first ring suburbs were excluded from any parts of the casino revenue dollars. So we have been building towards adding these dollars to the communities outside of the city of Cleveland. And I think that conceptually, that's something we all support. How we get there, we certainly can and should have this dialogue. But again, I just have to say, when Councilman Harrison brought the idea to me, it really struck me as a great idea. I was like, wow, why didn't I think of that? When we look at community development, there are certain institutions across this county that focus on it, and our CDCs are that one. Some of my first ring cities, they do it themselves, so they should be at the table. They are on the front line. But in the city of Cleveland, it's not the economic development; it is the CDCs. So to create the opportunity that all 59 counties put their dollars toward these casino revenues, this amendment does provide the appropriate institutions who are on the front line. Will there be competition? What will that competition look like? Let's talk about it. Let's look at and see who the players are. The city of Cleveland certainly has done it well. There are first ring suburb cities who have CDCs, and others who are looking to it not simply just to capture this money, but they know they have new challenges in their cities that they need to find creative ways to address. And some are looking at the way Cleveland has done things to start to do that themselves. They're not just looking at these dollars. There are foundations, the Cleveland Foundation, others who have traditionally focused on the city of Cleveland, who have to now start to think about those outer ring suburbs as populations start to move and migrate outwardly. So it's a new world for some of our cities, and I think it deserves a little time to. I am still in support, but I think we've seen over the years a little conversation, a little dialogue certainly can help us come to the most fair and appropriate solution. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Very well said. And yes, we have been down this road, and we've always been able to all end up at the same point most of the time. But any more discussion?
I would just like to say, at the end of the day, I think having gone through this for a year and 5 months, we're all like that close. I think all of our hearts are in the right place. I think it's now defining exactly what this looks like. To get here has been somewhat painful. I think we all can admit to that, but I think we've all bought in, and I think what we're not arguing is the wrong word. What we're discussing, talking points, I feel comfortable we can resolve at the end of the day. And if the 2 weeks is necessary, then we'll get it worked out between now and then.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Simon?
I can just say I've been working on this since day one, since the executive came with a proposal to, just allocate dollars for a small zone downtown. I've been fighting for this from the day one, and I'm really happy that it's finally trickled down into what I envision this money for and what our communities have expected when the whole county voted for casino revenue money, and to see it not available to them was very disappointing. So I'm very pleased, and I'm sure we'll work out the detail. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate the time to do that. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Any more questions, concerns, comments? All right, seeing none. Madam Clerk, any miscellaneous business?
No, Mr. Chair.
Any other public comment?
No one has signed in.
All right, this meeting is adjourned.